why can't we just have a human movement? Because when you start looking at this as an issue for women, it's not an issue for women, it's an issue for humanity. It's an issue for everybody, that women are not going to school, are being beaten, are being raped. It's an issue for everybody, because if the woman suffers, the man suffers, we all suffer.
Yeah.
So I think separating it and segregating it into an issue for women, just like race is not an issue for black people, it's an issue for all people. So I really do agree that it's not really about women's rights, it's about human rights. And I think we have to expand that discussion, because otherwise
I'm down with that.
we look at it through a gender role.
Right.
If I can just say, also why I'm not such a feminist, because again, like Fatboy said, you judge a movement by its actions, and I think also by results. Let's take a situation in South Africa where, for example, right now, parliamentary seats are 40% held by women, right? But in the Gauteng province, for instance, 1 in 4 women have been raped. So how exactly is this number of women in parliament directly contributing to these women at the grassroots? So I think having these token wins where we say, okay, now we don't want, or saying we have more representation in parliament or things like that, they're not necessarily clearing up the bigger problem.
I summarize it as theoretical reduction. So essentially what you're doing is you've got a theory, but you want everybody to fit in this nice little box, and yet that's not the case. I mean, even if you look at societies where men are prevalent, or patriarchal societies, right? What ends up happening is women find different ways or different outlets to express themselves or to disagree. Women sometimes manipulate men to get their own way. So you can't come in and say, oh, stand on a pedestal and shout for your rights. You make them a target. They have their own little ways in which they rebel, their own little ways in which they fight for their rights. But that's not taken into account. So that, I just wanted to make it very clear that I'm not a feminist, not because I don't think that we should fight for women's rights, but because I don't see the results and I think there's a better way to do it. Plus, I love men, so really, having a war against men to me is counterproductive. Nobody wins at the end of the day, and that is my problem with Alive and Kicking on Saturday. That was my big issue.
Is Fatboy clapping?
I don't know why it's clapping.
I'm clapping because she just said something profound.
But I love men. So I mean, if you have a brother, if you have a father, honestly, you don't want there to be a war against men. You're going to have sons at some point. It only makes sense.
And truthfully, even for women, sometimes feminism is seen as limiting as it is empowering sometimes, because if you tell me I have to go to work, I have to have a career in order to be taken seriously as a woman, I can't stay at home and look after my kids, and my kids should not play with Barbie dolls because they're girls, and all these other little things, because we're trying to be more like men.
Feminists believe that gender is a social construct, that we're all essentially blank slates, and that it is society that conditions girls to adopt traits that are traditionally called feminine, and the same for boys. So what they want to do, like they've done in Sweden, is to make sure they remove whatever kind of thing that might influence kids,
so you can choose your gender,
so that the kid can grow into whatever it wants to.
Absolutely. How are you a blank slate?
And Sweden is like the mecca of feminism. This is like the hub, it's like the headquarters.
Well, I think even scientific evidence disproves that, because men and women are born with different abilities, capabilities. It's a fact that men have more testosterone.
They learn differently.
Which means they tend to be more aggressive and more dominant. So
in the feminists,
there are things that we can't really go back on.
Okay, so I wanted us to look at 3 specific things this morning. The man is the head of the household is really what we're going with. That's the overarching theme. And there are 3 things that I think play a big role in why families are breaking down today. Cultural influence, sexual liberation, financial empowerment. These are the main 3 things. Women are making more money than men. You hear that argument all the time. Women are having sex whenever they want, with whoever they want. There are no restrictions. So I don't have to buy the cow when I can get the milk for free. You're hearing all people saying this left, right, and center. But cultural influence also, and cultural influence is feminism, what we've been talking about. How you perceive the world around you, that lens through which you see the world around you, right? And when it comes to culture, I think we've more than enough sort of stated that I'm not a feminist, and why I'm not a feminist, and the fact that culture is very important and plays a very important role. But I think people should consider other things around it. But very quickly, let's talk about sexual liberation. Yeah, because that's a big one for me. And for the main reason that and I'll tell you why I disagree with a lot of Fatboy's theories. Fatboy has an interesting theory that at the end of the day, girls these days are just looking to be chowed I hate that word, but he uses it all the time. You're out there having a good time. He's here forming a coalition called MGTOWs, men going their own way. I disagree, because you cannot. Men and women are meant to be together, to raise families, the whole of society is going to collapse. If all men join MGTOW, where are we going to end up? Have you ever thought about that?
Let me tell you.
Where will this world end if everybody joins the MGTOW revolution?
That's a wonderful question, and if you'll give me 2 seconds to answer. Essentially, men going their own way is an organic phenomenon. Here's what's happened. See, a lot of guys have found themselves disenfranchised by the system. They're finding it difficult to engage in relationships, whether long-term or even marriages in this day and age, because marital laws, particularly in the West, are extremely unfavorable towards men, and in the West we have a divorce rate of at least 50 to 60%, 70% initiated by women. 98% of the case, the mother gets custody of the children, and you're mandated by law to pay child support for 18 years, even when you may not see your kids. Essentially, marriage has continuously become a raw deal for men. Now, for us here in Africa, and from my own personal experience, if in my social circles, the women I'm encountering prioritize career over families, believe that because they have education, that they can belittle men and can be belligerent, and want to make the house girl do everything in the home. Essentially, marriage becomes unattractive for us as well. And so a lot of us are saying, why bother? And so it's not really like a conscious thing, like you've thought about it. You're just sort of finding that the whole deal isn't so sweet, so you're backing off. And so you're realizing, wait, here's another guy who thinks like me. Here's another guy who thinks like me. So we meet together and we talk about it. And so
you guys are never going to have families? You're
just slap the label on it. No, that's never say never, but let's just say. But
what message are you sending to young men out there who are looking to you for guidance, who are looking to you to sort of set an example? For example, I am not saying that you need to be a role model. No, I believe people should be responsible enough to make their own decisions. But let's be practical here. You said start a revolution. You start this psychological influence on people, where I'm seeing men these days saying there's nothing, I don't need to be married, I have nothing to gain.
But the fact is they don't. Short of,
don't you see that is a crisis?
The only thing that really pushes people to get married nowadays is maybe social pressure and maybe cultural pressure and maybe religious pressure as well. But in terms of actually thinking about what you want out of life, I don't think most people choose marriage out of pragmatic reasons, because the fact is, in this day and age, increasingly there is little being added to the man's life.
There's little being added to the man's life.
Yeah, by being married.
Interesting, because a lot of women also feel that nothing is being added to their lives. But if I may,
women going their own way, wagtails.
Yeah, but women going their own way, men going their own way gets us absolutely nowhere. And I think the point of this discussion today is to steer away from the women do this, men do that, and kind of make this about.
No, but it's become obsolete. That's the point. And
has it really?
And it's no one's fault.
Let
me tell you.
No, if I may just continue, since you have a few years here and I only have a day. Just kidding. But all I was saying, and I think I need to qualify my view, and I'm going to say expressly, it's not a popular view these days, but the theoretical framework of my convictions and my beliefs are Christian. Okay. So I come from a place where I believe that God created us and He created an order, because He is a God of order. Everything, if you look around you, if you watch the Discovery Channel, you'll find that everywhere in nature around you there's order in everything. I mean, I watched a fascinating TED Talk the other day that said they'd found a concentric pattern that they've found repeated millions of times in plants, in the way people build houses, and it was just mind-blowing, because there's an order to things. What goes up must come down. There are laws and principles. There are things that cannot be changed. Now, we live in an age of experimentation. We've had worldviews that have, over the years, have emerged, have morphed. They came from Christian. We've had secular worldviews, but now we're in an age of experimentation. We're trying everything and seeing, will this work? What happens when a man marries a man? What happens when, a woman is liberated and doesn't really need a family? What happens when two people can just decide to live together and not get married? And we have no idea what the results of these experiments are going to be. But what I say is that God created us a certain way and there's a certain order, there are things that can be changed. For example, women should be empowered. They should be equal to men. But there are also things that perhaps it is not a good idea to change. What I mean is, if you have a landlord, you move into a house, he may say it's okay to move around the furniture, you can do this, you can do that, but don't break down the walls, because then the house will collapse. Don't do this, don't change that. And I think sometimes we're changing too much and we're not really considering the ramifications of the things we're doing. So what happens in that situation, why we're looking at marriage as an institution that's failing, is because we haven't understood the purpose of it, and a lot of the times we're adding variables and things that we do not completely understand. So I come from a background where I believe that there needs to be order. There cannot be two drivers in a car. I do believe that the man is the head of household, but I have to say very, very clearly that head doesn't mean better. It just means responsible. And I think we've confused those definitions and made it a fight. And it shouldn't be a fight. It's just about order. It's about cooperation. It's about how do we do this and make it go somewhere. So there's something in it for all of us.
Okay, if you're listening, do you agree or disagree? Should the man be the head of the household? Are the feminists taking it too far? By the feminists, I do love you because I think you are trying very hard, but not quite agreeing with the entire concept or the construct right there. Do you agree with what Nancy is saying, or are you a MGTOW? By the way, MGTOWs, please feel free to call in, because I'm seeing a lot of y'all on Facebook, but for some reason you're not as vocal when it comes to when we give you a platform.
This is a taboo subject. It's a
MGTOW subject.
Very few guys are willing to openly talk about this.
That they're going their own way. But how come they're very open about it on Facebook?
It's because
everyone can see what you're saying on Facebook.
Because it's a new revolution.
All right, shall we take a quick call and then go into a break? Sanyu Breakfast, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good, thanks.
This is Hilda.
Yes, Hilda.
On Saturday I heard that a man is supposed to be the head of the household. Even today I'm hearing that the man is supposed to be the head of the household. I don't agree with that.
Sure, why don't you agree, Hilda?
Feminist.
If I look, Fatboy, who cares?
Grandma Hilda, go ahead.
If I look at the community where I work, it is women taking on every responsibility of the home. Paying school fees, providing food at home, while their men are going to the town centers playing Ludo games.
True, very true.
A guy can't buy for himself clothes. A guy can't save money to do anything for the home. They just want the women to be submissive in bed, and again provide food while they're doing nothing at home. So how can you be a head of a household when you can't provide nothing? Over the weekend I was looking at a case where I was able to refer a very, very critically malnourished child to Uyukwe Hospital. When I talked to the father, why aren't you taking care of your child? He was like, we produce these children for the government.
Oh gosh.
He wasn't even concerned that his child was very malnourished, he could die. Because father died. The mother died of HIV. He was like, I'm also sick, I have HIV. Take care of my child because we have a government that is supposed to take care of our children.
Wow.
I was like, what the fuck? What the hell?
Oops. Okay. Let's keep the language clear.
Why do you sleep on these women? You can't look after the children. Why don't you look at the consequences of having children? So I don't really agree with men being the head of the household, when everywhere you find women looking after their household.
Very good point, Hilda. Very good point. And we're going to get to that right after the break. Thank you. And this morning we're saying that in the crib there should be one leader. That's what we're saying. That's Belle Biv DeVoe with In My Crib at 17 minutes to 8, and you're listening to Signing Breakfast. Today we have a special person joining Fatboy and myself, and I don't know if you can call this an extension of Alive and Kicking for just today. I don't know.
We have no plans to introduce this person to us.
We will introduce her in due course. You worry not. Let's worry about the stuff that's coming out of her mouth.
By the way, she has good content.
Let's talk about the content and then deal with that later. We got a call earlier on from Hilda. Hilda sounded quite irate, bitter about the fact that we're saying this morning that the man should be the head of the household. I also got a text from someone who said, can you guys please clarify what head of the household means? We're gonna get to that. But what Hilda said is that she doesn't think the man should be the head of the household because women are taking responsibility in many homes. She works with women and she was dealing with a malnourished child whose father just didn't seem to care about taking responsibility. So she's like, how dare you suggest that such a man should be given respect as the head of the household when he's already shirking his role?
Right. I think there are a few things to clarify. One, when we say the man should be the head, first of all, should is the operative word. And of course there are going to be exceptions. But when we say the man should be the head of the household, this is a certain kind of man. This is not any kind of man. And I think the problem we have is, and you know,
would Fatboy make a good head of a household?
I don't know Fatboy that well.
You lie.
But I actually think I think he might. At least a good indication to me is that he thinks about marriage and he thinks about why he would get into marriage. And a lot of us get into marriage because we're 27 and that's what people do. But that
it's like puberty done.
It's like puberty done. Next, what's next? And we never really think about what is the purpose of this institution. What am I getting into? What is my role in this institution? Every institution has an order. So in marriage, when we say that the man should be the head of the household, we're saying that because it means he should be responsible for the household. It doesn't mean that he's the boss and lords it over everyone and takes every opportunity given to him to, you know, subjugate the woman. No, it just means that he takes responsibility. He covers her, he protects her. But a lot of the time we give that privilege to men who don't deserve it. So again, the onus is on us as well to find the right man. If you find a man who has a clear self-image, who is working, it's very important to find a man who's working. The Bible says that the woman was given as a helper. You can't help a man who's doing nothing.
What are you helping him to do? You can help him play video games.
Amen. Amen. But you know, just to add on to what you're saying, because you're on a very interesting train of thought there. I think the sexual revolution did something really strange and it has had a catastrophic effect. You see, feminists will tell us that the way husbands were selected for women, that this was a form of oppression, and yet this was society taking the responsibility of finding the ideal man for their daughter, right? Rather than allowing her to choose her husband on a whim, on her emotions, on a sexual attraction to the guy, which is what you're seeing today. So what's happening is girls are marrying guys because, oh, he's cool, or oh, he's good in bed, oh, he's sexy, he's hot, he has swag, and for all of these reasons, they're marrying guys they're meeting in clubs and pubs, and you know, they're head over heels, madly in love with this guy, and before you know it, she's pregnant with his child, and then before you know it, there's a shotgun wedding. And then she wakes up and realizes, wait a second, but this guy doesn't work. This guy doesn't look after me. Well, surprise, surprise, he wasn't the ideal man for you. And you couldn't have known that because you were making your decision based on your hormones and those tinglings you were feeling in your body. And so what the sexual revolution did was to tell women, you know, do what you want. You know, don't feel constrained by anything. It's all about feeling fulfillment. Are you happy with that guy? Does he excite you? Does he? And so women are looking for qualities that are completely contrary to what make for good long-term husband. They're looking for a guy who can give them a high at the moment. And guys like that often tend not to be responsible, hardworking, dependable guys. So for the lady that called in and said, but there are no women, they're running the home, you know what, I can sympathize with that. But at the same time, what kinds of husbands did they choose?
But my problem is, why is the onus always on the women? Okay, I understand responsibility. I'm not saying women should shirk their responsibility. But what about these deadbeat guys? I mean, someone should be telling them to man up. You know, and this is the thing, because every time I say that men are afraid of women who are powerful, Fatboy laughs at me and says, you're shaming us. I'm not shaming you. I'm just saying that you don't want a woman who's going to come correct, who's going to tell you, you need to style up, you need to be responsible. You know, so I still feel like some of the blame should be carried by the men. I mean, that's what this discussion is about, right? It's about not fighting each other.
Yeah, but you see,
let's apportion the blame. Let's apportion the blame.
Hang on. No, because what we are doing is we are responding to the complainant. which 90% of the time is women complaining about the state of men.
Yes.
If I met a guy complaining about how the women of today were this and that and the other, my advice to him would be just don't marry. Have nothing to do with it. And if he finds himself with a nagging, stressful woman, guess who I'll blame?
Himself. You say it's his fault.
And it is because the complainants in this debate is women, is why it feels like we're placing the onus on women unfairly. But the fact is, we're just sort of directing the dialogue to where it's coming from.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
Yes,
that's my problem.
And I think this is not about apportioning blame, because it's a cyclical problem. The blame does not end with one thing, because what happens, as you're both saying, the men are not suitable, the women are not suitable, but this is...
So no one is suited to anyone.
Yeah, but this is what happens. I just want to speak to Hilda, because, she said, these men are not responsible and they're not doing what they should be doing, and it's true and it's sad that there are very few responsible men out there. However, this is the problem, and this is why it's so important for us to talk about this, because what happens is, when you have a broken home, that man does not know how to be a man. He goes and hurts a woman, and that woman becomes bitter, and then the whole thing goes around like
she raises bitter
children. And men, so men who are raised by a single mother who is bitter will also grow up expecting certain things from women, and expecting not to need to do certain things, because they've never seen a man who was a man. So to Hilda, I do say it is sad that we have men who are not exactly living up to the billing of head of the household, but there are men who are. There are men who are doing that. They're out there. There are men who understand their role as a father, as a protector, as a husband, and they are doing it. And part of the reason we have a problem is we never talk about that. We're always talking about the bad men. We don't talk about the good men. We never talk about the good men. And this even gives men license to why should I be any different? This is what is expected of me. Right. And we get what we expect.
Okay, cool. Just to talk to let's see, we have someone on the line before I go to the next item I was wanted to talk about. Sanyu, breakfast, good morning.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I just wanted to thank you for your presenters this morning. Also to say what you've been doing just recently was really, really good. Men grow up with macho mode.
We are grown up. Here's the problem. You're not choosing the grown-up guys. You're choosing the bad boys and the players. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do when I advise you to go for responsible men and you tell me they're too boring, so you go run after the guy who's drinking all day? How does it become my fault? Why do I need to man up? Why are you attacking her?
She hasn't even said what
because she said man up. I take that as an attack.
Okay.
She's attacking men in general, and I'm telling her, you woman up and choose the right man.
Go ahead, sweetheart.
Please. What I was saying is this. Your presenter says that men don't talk about things, even between themselves. And they'll go up with this, no, I don't want to talk about it. They'll go to their room and do them good. So when they go get married, they'll still not talk about the issues that affect the institution, their home. So if a woman has a problem, the man will not say anything. And instead, he will try to practice in his own way, a manly way, which is either go and hang out with friends or drink or go somewhere else and everything but talk. While we want to talk all the time. And he will not want. And eventually, if it's a year, then it will be 2 years, and then the woman will not know what to do. And that's why I think, and unfortunately, in the end, you find that the woman will say, you know what, I did not see the man. So if there is a way we can encourage
men to actually sit and I think that's a brilliant point she's raising, because it brings us to what Fatboy said about the kind of man you pick. And this is a very interesting point for me, because marriage is an institution. It has a purpose, and in that purpose people play certain roles and have certain responsibilities. Unless you can fully comprehend and grasp this, you have no business getting married. If you're getting married because you want to wear a pretty dress, you're in trouble. If you're getting married because you're 30 and in your company you're not serious unless you have a wife to cook and clean for you at home, you're in trouble. So people are not understanding their roles. But more so, let's speak to the man right now, because men who are answerable to no one except themselves are the worst men to marry.
And that brings me to the point of submission. Submission is like a cuss word these days. If you say to someone, yes, as a woman I will submit to my husband, they look at you like you're crazy. Like have you no backbone? But submission, I think, has
feminists are choking
terribly.
Right now.
I know, right?
They're gagging, but
just allow me to say. And I mean,
yeah, feminists hate the word.
And
submission.
I mean,
but is it a dirty word?
It's not a dirty word.
Is submission anti-feminist?
It's not anti-feminist because I think it has been misconstrued. If we look at the word submission,
what is
right? Its roots really are in the Greek. Its etymology is Greek, okay? Yeah. So it comes from hupotasso. But they're like, it's called hupotasso, which means literally to surrender. Okay? It came from a military term, to surrender. However, if you look at how it's used in the Bible, which by the way is the basis of the whole wives submit to your husband. If you look at the way it's used in the Bible, there are like 5 different ways that word is used. But the particular context of that actually means a voluntary cooperation. It's about a voluntary attitude of cooperation. It's not about one being more than the other. The same word is used in another part of the Bible where Paul says, submit to one another in the church. How can you submit to one another if submitting means being less than? You can't be less. I can't be less than you today and then you're more than me today. Yeah. If we're submitting to one another, it actually means a spirit of cooperation, and that's what it means, because at some point someone needs to drive the car and I need to cooperate with you.
Otherwise you will crash, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think the problem is that submission is seen as weakness.
Yes.
As you not being insecure. You don't think enough of yourself to be at par with or equal.
It actually takes a lot more strength to be submissive, because submission is also about
But let's talk about the good part of submission. The good part of submission means that you're not responsible entirely for the direct, not the direction. What do I mean? I mean that you have protection, you have cover. Fatboy gave a good example. If I work in a company, right, it's not up to me to run everything. I obviously make some decisions, I do give some suggestions, but at the end of the month, for example, my salary is up to my boss. There's certain things that I've delegated essentially, and certain responsibilities and certain stresses even, certain stresses. And the truth is, being a head of household is not easy. It's not a luxury job, by the way. So all these men thinking being head of household means coming home, scratching your belly and saying, woman, get me a beer and remote control.
It's a responsibility.
What needs to happen is, I think women need to encourage each other to look for men who are worthy. And guess what? Sometimes the worthy men will be the most boring to you, the most unexciting. But if you're looking for long-term stability for a dependable man,
what a marriage is supposed to be and what the institution is actually for,
that's the guy you're going to want to marry. Not Mr. Hotshot Playboy, he gives me a blast, we go out every Friday. That may not be the guy.
Men who are not boring.
But also, yes, they are. But here's what I think is the most important thing about submission. Submission is conditional. You don't submit to just anyone. It's very clear. You submit to your husband. You don't submit to all men. You submit to your husband, because that's the order of the institution that you're in.
That's why I fight with Fatboy. I can't submit to Fatboy. Never.
And also,
I die before that happens.
And it's conditional, meaning the kind of person I submit to. First of all, personally for me, that person has to be submitted to God, because that's how it works. He submits to God, yes, and then I submit to him,
himself,
because then I know I'm safe. Because if I submit to a man, sorry James, but if I submit to a man who has no person to be accountable to other than himself, I'm in trouble. Because if he's faithful to me because he loves me, what happens the day when he wakes up and he doesn't feel like he loves me, or the day he doesn't find me attractive? He's going to cheat on me. But if he is accountable to a higher power, he's not going to, because it is his character and it's his integrity.
I don't want to disappoint you, but all these quote-unquote God-fearing men, some of them are the biggest dogs out there.
Those are not God-fearing men.
Those are not God-fearing men.
I'm talking going all the way up to the pastor even.
Driving into sleeping in a garage does not make you a car. Just because you go to church does not mean you're a Christian. A Christian is someone who is
Christ-like. I think there's certain telltale signs. Okay, we're going to go to break. I know the phone lines are going crazy. We will take more calls in the next hour. We'll be back with this interesting discussion. 88.2 Sanyu FM. Good morning. My name is Seanice. I'm here with Fatboy. How are you this morning, Fatboy?
I'm fine. I'm enjoying our conversation actually.
Okay.
I'm hearing a lot of sense from the ladies.
This morning we've got a special guest joining us, and the objective of the discussion is to go beyond that tired argument that pits men against women, where we are fighting and we want to win the war, today to actually find solutions to the problem. What is the problem? The problem is very simple. MGTOW. That is the problem. Yes, you're a problem, Fatboy. Don't look at me like that. MGTOW, that's a big problem. Men going their own way. Marriages breaking down after 1 year, sometimes 6 months. Single parent homes, dysfunctional families, men and women cheating on each other at amazing rates. These days, it's like you are baffled when you find a couple where one of them is not cheating. Because usually it's both are cheating. Right? Wow. For whatever reason, flimsy, right, revenge, what? Just random things. And we talked about 3 things. We talked about cultural influence, why feminism, I think, in some ways getting it wrong. We talked about sexual liberation. I feel like women should be the custodians of sex. We should be. We should be the gatekeepers. We should be like guards outside Crane Bank. You know those guards? They don't just let you in anyhow. Huh? And you don't just walk in and get money and walk out. No, there's a process and a procedure.
They frisk you.
They frisk you. They make sure you are legit. They make sure you have money in the bank before you withdraw. But the way we're giving away sex is like we opened the bank and said, you guys, we threw money on the street, and then we ask guys why they don't value the money. Well, it's everywhere. It's easily available.
Yes.
So I think sexual liberation also, we need to be honest and frank about that, what it's doing to families.
There's an interesting quote I heard that men behave as badly as women allow them to.
Oh my goodness, that is so true.
And I'll tell you, as a man, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Because you're brought up and told by your mother about how you must respect and care and cherish women. So when you start picking an interest in girls when you're in adolescence and into university, you start trying to pursue girls, you're hit with the greatest shock of your life.
Which is what?
You notice that the girls whom you treat the way your mother said you should treat girls, they're not interested in you. Instead, we see the girls flocking to the guys who treat them so badly. And we as men, we get confused.
I still feel like that is also your choice of girl. I feel like that is also your choice of girl. I've always said this.
No, what I'm saying, okay, you know what, to be honest, it's neither here nor there, but when we pursue girls and we notice that girls from even good families who are intelligent, that they tend to
like the bad boy,
to pick the scraps of the heap. They like these absolute total losers. That the more abusive the men were, the more the girls tended to like them. So we responsible, sort of otherwise caring, thoughtful guys, we shrug our shoulders and say, oh, what are we supposed to do?
I feel like it's a phase that women also go through.
I think it's a blanket sort of term that you're using, but also I think these are symptoms that we're looking at. They're symptoms of a larger problem, and the larger problem is that sex has been taken out of context completely. I talked about moving furniture around versus breaking walls. When it comes to sex, we have broken the walls. Sex was not made for what we're using it for now. Absolutely not.
Validation, acceptance.
No, but let me tell you, if
curing your problems of low self-esteem.
If women reserved their attention and their praise and their validation for men who were responsible and upright, actually men would aspire to be
that way. That is true, but this is not just about
we see the thugs getting all the nice girls.
but this is not just about the women, it's the men as well. We each have a role to play when it comes to being responsible about sex. Now
we're asking men to be responsible about
sex. Yes, I am.
I think you might be disappointed.
No, and I believe that I will not be disappointed, because a man who understands
men and women treat sex differently. Men use sex for recreation.
They do, but I'm tired of women need argument that men are visual creatures and they're not animals. They can control themselves.
Men are animals. I'm sorry.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
No?
I do not believe that. They're not animals. They can control themselves, and they can, in fact, respect a woman who values herself and knows her worth. And
that to me seems not rooted in reality. It seems a bit, how do I say, whimsical and like wishful thinking.
That's because the world we live
wish in. Men were responsible. We wish men did
but
not
there are men
want
who are
to
responsible.
Sleep with different
but
women.
There are men who are responsible.
Yeah, we're there, but you don't want us. You want the bad boys. What are we supposed to do?
No. That's not.
So actually, what has happened is so what men going their own way on, essentially are guys who are otherwise, like, these are guys who would have wanted families, let me tell you, who would have wanted to find that woman and cherish her, but just the game is so much stacked against them that we've sort of walked off the plantation. So, you know what?
And I can't believe I'm going to quote Life Jennings, but really, there are a lot of nickels out there looking for dimes.
Let me tell you, really,
Seanice was saying, you are not responsible as a man. You are not guarding your sexuality, and you somehow expect to meet in a club a virtuous woman. How is that going to work?
Let me tell you, that's why, you see, men going their own way. What we've done is we've looked around and we've seen that the landscape is just so full of mines that
you don't want to
decided to play it safe and just get off the plantation, get off the minefield. And Seanice was saying, we need to stop these women and men fighting in each other. Let me tell you, men going their own way, we stopped fighting.
No, you gave up. That's a different thing.
We stopped fighting. We don't bother with it.
There's a difference between giving up and not fighting. You fight for the right thing.
And we will keep our interactions with you limited.
No, you will keep them
to the extent that we can get what we need.
You just want to hit it and quit it.
Closing your eyes.
This is a guy who Fatboy, really? With your maturity, your intelligence, you go on Facebook and write things like "hit it and quit it," pounce and bounce. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, I cannot know.
If more was being brought, if more was being brought to the table, guys would automatically.
You can be part of
running and begging for your hands.
You can be part of a generation that tasks people to bring more to the table, but you're too lazy to do it. So don't be there.
But when we ask,
MGTOW is a
let me ask you. We ask the ladies to bring more to the table. The ladies tell us.
What are you doing about it? Why should it be only the women bringing more to the table? Why can't you challenge your fellow men to also stand up and be the kind of men who want? I mean, seriously. And then he laughs. You see, this is how
no.
degenerates to.
Here's why. The reason I'm finding it humorous is, you see, because I believe in free will. I believe in people acting according to their interests and being responsible for the consequences of those choices. So I'm not going to go out there and tell women how to be. I want women to be what they want to be.
I think we're kind of going away. Yes, we're digressing.
No, we're getting to the main point. You see, because this all boils down to choices people are making and the consequences.
No, it doesn't just boil down to choices.
Choices are influenced by culture, by society.
They make those choices. It's important. If my mother does not teach me,
then of course I'll make stupid decisions.
What sexuality is, or I have no mentors. I've never seen a good marriage. I've never seen sex in the right context. Then of course I'm going to have a warped view of it. And so you walking away and pretending the problem does not exist.
Okay, now we need to talk about the white elephant in the room. All right.
Okay. Can we take a call before we talk about the white elephant? Sanyu breakfast. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, man.
Yes. How are you?
I'm fine.
I love that the ladies are calling in today. I haven't heard from a single guy.
Because I'm saying all that needs to be said.
Keep quiet. Yes, my dear.
I just wanted to say that I'm a very big believer in the Bible. And the Bible says two things. Men, love your women. Women, respect your men.
Yeah.
You know? Love comes with respect. Respect comes with love. You know what I mean? But there's a reason why God says that women should respect me. Because that's what they need more than love. And
true, men do need respect more than anything else.
Exactly. And there's a reason why he says men should love their wives. Because women want to be loved
more than anything else.
You know? But women need to be lovable. You know what I mean? And
that's an interesting point. But if women need to be lovable, men need to be respectable.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Men need to be respectable. I mean, I'm not going to respect someone that is not working hard and, being the man in the house. You know what I mean? I have no problem with respect, but you have to be respectable.
Yeah, worthy of that respect.
Exactly. I will also try to be lovable. But we can't complain if we have this whole independent, strong woman syndrome that's going around with black women because it's being promoted in the media.
Right.
I mean, we see all these black series, movies and whatnot, and there's Olivia Pope and
Olivia Pope is just
lots of the century.
Shoot me in the face.
There's nothing wrong with being strong and independent.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't.
But there's a silent, strong kind of independence that's not belligerent, that's not in your face, that's not pushing men away.
Be a ball breaker.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. Yeah. Very well said.
There's a reason why Olivia Pope is single.
You just killed all the scandal guys this morning.
But that's the truth. We women nowadays think it's cool and And that's what men want. But actually, men want women that are going to respect them.
Let me tell you, ladies, we don't care about your jobs. We don't care about your degrees. We don't care about your PhDs. What we want is a nice, pleasant, beautiful woman who can take care of us and give us peace. Period.
But you see, you also play a role in making her that nice, respectable, responsible woman who can raise your kids. Period. Yes, you do.
No, we don't.
What? No, you. Oh my.
No, we don't.
Listen to this guy.
Oh my goodness.
This woman just said, men crave respect, women crave love.
Here's how it works.
They crave being looked after. So you can't get one without the other factor.
But here's how it works. The thing is, you can't.
No.
You know what? They tell us that you can change people. You can't. People are what they are. They're a product of their upbringing, environment, to a large extent, genes as well.
So if you bring
people
them
are
up the right way,
so what you
to
do,
believe the right thing.
What you do, Madam Guest, is to is to look for people who have the characteristics that you desire. Which is why this. Standing here and talk about men need to man up, it's a waste of time.
But those people will not be there if we don't
so what you need to do, what they are there. You need to keep an eye open.
But they're there because
for the men who have.
Fatboy, that's a good question. Why Madame Guest is asking, why are those men there?
Because someone taught them.
Exactly.
This is the right way. This is the way you should behave. And if we do not talk about this, there are a lot of men out there who did not have a good father, who did not have a stable home.
Yeah, but what I mean is, you see, but if a man is that way because of 10 years of being brought up to be like that, what I'm saying is, if you're going to find a product of, say, a single mother household, some guy who feels lazy and entitled, he's not going to change. He's always going to be a bum. You know what I mean? No matter how much you preach to him,
that's why you get them when they're still young. You don't get them when they're in their 30s.
Be selective.
You know that song, Can't Raise a Man? It's so true.
Be
selective. Cannot raise a man. He's already raised.
No.
So
exactly. Yeah? Thank you. So raise your standards. Look for the guy that meets your criteria. And if you can't find that man, then don't settle with any.
So what? Guy single with a cat is what Fatboy is saying, essentially.
Rather than marry a bum, I think it's a better option.
I'm just saying, no, we should try and we should task the men to man up. We should task them to be better.
And I'm telling you, it's a waste of time. Those who are not so inclined will not.
What's the alternative? That we give up?
You're not listening to me. I said be selective.
To you.
Be selective.
Yeah, be selective, but what if that's not an option? Because you see, the majority are going to tend to be bums. Then what do? We just sit back and say, oh, well, that situation, 90% of women are not going to get married anymore. You're not going to stop people from getting married.
Well, that's what MGTOWs did, man. We just looked around and said, hey.
MGTOWs gave up. That's a cop-out. Never really told you what MGTOW is.
It's called the path of least resistance.
Of no resistance. Sanyu breakfast.
Complicate your life.
Oh, finally, a gentleman. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Quick comment.
Sure.
In relationships, we're told that when a man looks at a woman, he thinks, I hope he doesn't change. When a woman looks at a man, she says, I hope I can change him.
And they both get disappointed.
The man they want, you know. If I want a guy who will do this for me, it's visible. You can see him before even he's married. You know? You won't want to think I'll get Fatboy and he'll be the most romantic guy in the world. It won't happen.
Because he's not romantic now. No.
You want a person who will take care of you.
Yes.
You know, many times men are very easy to mold. Yeah. The man is to keep happy. Is he saying?
Is he really?
Maybe the girls. Men are like tiles. If you let them right.
Oh gosh.
The rest of your life.
Oh my gosh. You didn't just
what?
It's a very simplistic view of things. That men are like tiles. If you lay them right, you have them for life.
Wow. Let me tell you, people are a product of their upbringing. To find them as adults and start trying to
change them,
it's
fallacy.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. If a girl has grown up her whole life with a mother with a chip on her shoulder telling her about, don't ever listen to a man, do your own things, make your money, never depend on a man, a woman like that,
the same thing happens
just never gonna be.
The same thing happens in business. They tell you hire character, train skill. You can never change character.
I actually think one of the best movies I've ever watched is The Matrix, because I think it explains the world we live in.
You and Fatboy.
Yeah.
Really?
This
I did not know this.
We're on the same page today.
But you see, I think it's a good movie because it kind of explains the situation we live in today, especially when it comes to marriages. We're convinced that there is this world that we live in that is so false. We do not see reality for what it is.
That's right. So you gotta take the red pill.
We think the reality of marriage is finding a hot guy with a great bod who will look good.
What's wrong with me looking for a hot guy with a great body?
Yes, the problem is the order.
Are we talking about Fatboy?
It should be at the bottom of your list of...
The problem is the priority. The priority.
It shouldn't be number one.
Nobody talks about character. Have you ever watched a film where someone talks about his character?
It would be boring.
Hollywood character is amazing. But the problem is we're buying into that and applying it to real life. That's not real life. Real life is about character, because guess what? 20 years down the road, when his looks have gone and he's lost his job, the only thing you have left is his character.
Wow. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about money.
The elephant in the room.
Is that the elephant
exactly.
in the room? Oh, okay. Money.
I have made my own dating life very hard for myself. And for the men who have dated me, for sure. I'm the first to admit that I'm not easy. And part of the problem is that I have gone in trying to win. And this is a problem. My need to win and be better than, or be stronger than, or to prove that I didn't need a man has actually not worked in my favor. I've always thought that by being super independent and proving to potential mates that I didn't need anyone, that I would be very attractive, because you always hear that men don't like needy, clingy women. And so it's always been my goal, right, to not be needy. And so I've become very self-sufficient. I started to think that I was a fish who did not need a bicycle. And in a lot of ways, that's true. If I never met another man for the rest of my life, and I just lived my life, I would be fine. But I could probably be better if I were willing to open myself up to be vulnerable and to be hurt and to love someone else. I have had great success in the world functioning with a masculine model. And so one of the things I know I've been trying to do is get more in touch with what that feminine side means. And the idea of being submissive or passive or weaker, of course, just rubs me the wrong way. And I don't think that's how we have to do it. I don't think that's how you have to do it. I believe there is a real strength in feminine power, and we're still trying to figure out what that is. But I can tell you what it isn't. And it isn't trying to go in and beat men at their own game. That doesn't work. And if you've been single like me, then you know there's a limit to how successful that game is.
Well, very interesting. Today we have a guest in studio joining us, Seanice and Fatboy and Sanyu breakfast.
Who's the guest, by the way?
Don't worry. That should not be important right now. We'll let you know in due course who our guest is.
She's a computer.
Maybe she is. Sounds a little too organized to be a normal person. But we're talking about this whole men versus women, right? And I think just listening to that woman speak about how she's single and her relationships haven't worked out because she's tried to beat the guy at his own game. It brings me to the one thing I want to talk about, and Fatboy called it the white elephant in the room, which is money. Right. Financial empowerment. You see, submission is affected by money. Women earning more than men. Men finding that what they are, society thinks is their primary role, has been overtaken by women. Right. So they're feeling emasculated, useless, a bit redundant. Men are accusing women of being, what does it say? I said that you women with money are rude. Something like that. I can't remember exactly how he termed it. But yeah, so women are acting like they don't need men. They're earning more, they're pulling down huge salaries, and I think that's one of the things that is affecting this whole, the man is the head of the household. How is the man the head of the household if I'm earning more than him? How can he possibly be the head? It's like, if I'm out earning my boss, how does that affect the dynamic of having an institution with a head?
All right, and I'm glad we have finally broached this subject, because this is really the crux of the issue. See, there are two tiers to female sexual attraction to a male. One is the alpha male model, where you are attracted to males that display confidence, dominance, brute strength, indifference, sort of that macho thing, right? He's the dominant male, high up there in the social infrastructure of that society. Sort of, that's the male you have a natural craving for. That's the male who you will naturally be inclined to pursue. And then there is the beta model, which is the more long-term model, in which a woman will seek to exchange her sexuality in exchange for the fruits of a man's labor and the offer of his protection. You see, so that is the basis of a long-term human courtship. And then the alpha model is more short-term. It is to just for her to get her rocks off. He mates with her, and they both part ways, because alpha males, seeing as they're the top of the chain, they aren't predisposed to settle for one. So what happens is that with the advent of civilization, the beta model of mating sort of became more predominant, where it was more beneficial to the woman to find a mate with whom she could
settle down long term,
right? Offer her reproductive capacity in exchange for the fruits of his labor. All right. So that really was a boom, that period, for the beta male. So as long as you're a man that was able to work hard and provide, you were guaranteed to find a woman that would be willing to settle with you and to respect you as a husband. Also, at that time, economic options for women were limited, really not through any intention, but really the way the world was at the time. There were no offices where you could sit and type an email and get a paycheck. I mean, this is a world of harsh reality. Most people were serfs or peasants of some kind. People were toiling. It was that kind of a world, and the fruit of a man's labor was quite important for a woman's survival. Okay, so now technology, industrialization, and the explosion of the tertiary or the services sector, in which now that the world is safe, women can venture out and can easily find ways of earning money for themselves, enough to sustain them.
In fact, in a knowledge economy, you'd see that the most sought after skills are actually skills possessed by women. Negotiation, empathy, right brain skills. Exactly. Being able to communicate.
So what
marketing, selling.
Now, the side effect of this has been that women are now economically independent.
Yes.
Meaning, now that they have money, their dependence on men for money is significantly diminished. But they still will want men, and guess what they do? What they're going to do is they're going to look up, because women are naturally attracted to guys who have more than them, more economically and status-wise. But since they're making a lot of money, the pool of men that they will deem worthy
shrinks,
right? So now a woman will look around and just not find many men that will be worth her time to pursue, and what happens, what you see is you have lots of women chasing the few loaded guys that are there. Okay, so now that this is happening, what does this mean? It means women are now reverting back to the pre-civilization mating model, which is the alpha male, the bad boy. Seeing as they no longer need to depend on a man for their sustenance, they can now engage or indulge in their more natural cravings for the bad boy thug with an attitude. So the more economically successful women become, what do we see? We see them increasingly going for the thugs and the bad boys, and these are the men
who make terrible fathers, husbands.
Exactly. And these are the men that women are dragging to the altar, right? And then they wonder.
But it's because both sexes are confused. Let me tell you, while you're talking, and all these are facts. I love that you've laid it out very well for us to actually have a debate about it. It doesn't change the fact that we need to find a solution. Number one, we need to find a solution, because even today, Fatboy, the truth is most men cannot survive. They cannot go it alone, right? They cannot provide for the woman fully what she wants, because the truth is, life is more competitive. Prices are crazy, so survival.
Do I look like an advocate of marriage to you?
Of course you don't look like an advocate of marriage, but we're saying marriage being the cornerstone of society, and also being the best way to raise a family that is a successful family. You have to agree with me that marriage is obviously the obvious choice. If is it any functional homes, right?
Is it any coincidence that the escalation or the exponential explosion of divorce rates have coincided with economic independence for women?
But if we can go back,
it's no accident. It's intricately tied.
But the core, and I'll get to
together.
That. Yeah.
The core of this matter, which is we're saying, how has money changed the whole marriage relationship?
Yes.
It has made men redundant. but I'm sorry.
Okay, well, Fatboy says it has made men redundant. I think that money in this equation is furniture in the room of marriage. We said you can move things around. You can move the furniture around. Don't break down the walls. Now, we've moved some furniture around. We've changed the equation. Women are now not entirely dependent on men for financial provision.
And in some cases out-earning them.
Some cases out-earning them. What does that mean for how this then works? I think this is very important to address the purpose of marriage. If you're going to talk about money, you have to address the purpose of marriage. I had to get to a point where I asked myself, why would I get married? Why do I want to get married? Why would I? Because if it's about, it used to be about security. It's not about that anymore. I don't need.
So that means a chair has moved somewhere within this room.
A chair has moved within this room. So I need to figure out why it is that I actually need to get into this marriage institution. And so if we define and it's different for different people, let's be honest. Some people do get married for financial provision. which means that if you marry a man who cannot provide for you, you're going to have a problem because the purpose of the marriage was laid out. However, if your purpose in getting married is to have children and leave a legacy, then financial provision is going to be a bit of the furniture that it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's the man providing or you providing, but your goal together is to raise a happy family, and then you move the furniture around and make it work. You'll find a man who may be okay with earning less than you as long as that relationship is not broken. And by relationship I mean he can still be the head of the house if you're earning more money than him. It takes maturity, it takes character, but it can still happen. Money is a tool of control, but it is a tool. It's not the end thing.
Madam Guest,
it's not.
Madam Guest, I applaud your effort to promote this ideal, but the problem is it's unrealistic because essentially you're trying to fight nature.
No.
Because it is very difficult for a woman to respect the man in a relationship dynamic when she is out earning him.
Depending on
it is very difficult.
It depends
it's not impossible,
on the lens,
but it's extremely.
Thank you.
It depends on the lens through which you
see the world
You've
around
seen
you.
I'm looking at it
people
black
fall
and white.
in love, but you've seen very rich
culture. You see, culture is playing a role here.
Exactly. You see very rich people falling in love with very poor people because to them money is not an issue. They have so much that it doesn't even matter.
Sure, but if everyone, if you're all poor,
because biology, then how does that work?
It's not about culture. If I may say, there are cultural laws and then there are moral laws. We're focusing too much on the cultural laws. The cultural laws say a man should earn more than a woman, otherwise you can't expect
biological
a moral
because
law.
People respond to incentives. That people respond more to survival incentives rather than any moral or cultural.
So you were saying the moral laws are what?
Yes, what I was saying is the moral laws are a lot more nuanced, and honestly they're the only things that are important. And this, I have to say, is where we have a problem now, even in the church, because we're focusing on cultural laws, things like you should wear a skirt this high, you should do this, you should not do that, you should not go to this place, you should not go to that place, when the problem is actually the moral laws. The moral laws
let me tell you what I've noticed.
The cultural ones.
Okay, this may not be true for all guys, and I invite any guys to call in and tell me if I'm wrong, if I am. And this is a question I'll pose to guys. Is it or is it not true that when you tend to have a lot of money, your woman is easier to manage?
That's
yes or no?
That's not relationship.
Yes or no? I'd like to hear an answer to this question. And so what this tells us is that money is a very important form of leverage that men bring into relationships, the same way women bring sex as leverage in a relationship. So if I'm married to you as your husband, I am inclined to behave well towards you because I'm interested in that sex that you have, see? But imagine if I had options for sex, like if I had a girlfriend on the side. So if I hang on, so if I got home and I wanted to sleep with you and you didn't allow me, I'd just shrug my shoulders and sort of go off to the side dish rather than maybe do what you want me to do such that you would be willing to have sex with me. Now when money is taken,
you're agreeing with what I'm saying, because what you're saying is I can control you with money, I can also control you with sex.
Because
so we're talking about control here,
because
we're missing the point, which is purpose. What are you trying to achieve?
Both parties
who control each other and win over each other.
You can't win. You have to understand why you're getting married in the first place.
Let's go back to what you said earlier, that relationships are institutions, which none of you disagreed with. All right, a functional relationship between, say, me and my boss, my immediate superior, is that there is amount of leverage that my boss exercises over me. My boss relies on me on my productivity. I rely on my boss for my employment and my check. So I know that if I misbehave or break the rules, my check is compromised. Therefore, I am incentivized to behave well. What if I was doing this job for free and not earning a salary from here? Do you think, let me ask you this, don't you think I would be less inclined to listen to my boss if I was not dependent on this boss for money?
Interns are sometimes
but they understand the purpose that they're there for is to get experience. It may not necessarily be money.
But it's a different kind of leverage.
That is what we're saying.
Guys,
furniture has moved.
Sorry, I feel like we're straying away from what the guest speaker said in the first place, which is...
What's her name?
Guest speaker said that we are not understanding the purpose of the institution. I agree with you, Fatboy, to an extent about institution. I loved what you said about having a boss, about relegating responsibility upwards and all that, and deferring authority. All that is true. However, you cannot compare every aspect of a job to marriage. No. There are some Fatboy. There are some elements. There are some elements that are so nuanced that you cannot compare them directly.
Why do you need leverage? Why do you need leverage in a partnership? Why do you need to leverage?
Guys, let me finish. And I think we're both missing the point. Is a very valid one, which is people need to understand the purpose for which they are getting married. You need to know that at the end of the day, this is the end game. Healthy children, happy family, financial security. If you know the purpose for which you are getting married, then you know what you need to do to make it work. And this is my problem. People don't understand the purpose. No one sits and thinks, should I get married? I don't know how many women actually sit and think, but should I really get married? People think more about the cars they're going to buy and the color of that car than they do about whether or not I should commit the rest of my life to this man or this woman. Sure. And that's where it all breaks down.
And I'm telling you,
it's not about leverage. It's about a partnership. A marriage cannot be about leverage. In a place where women are earning as much money as men.
And I tell why I don't think it can be about leverage. Because like you're saying, marriage is about a unit. Two become one. Why do I need to leverage my right arm against my left arm?
It's ridiculous.
We're doing the same thing.
Yes.
So if it works better for us now that you stay at home and take care of the kids, because guess what? The furniture has moved around. You can't find a job, but I can.
Yes.
We're working towards the same goal.
Thank you very much. And that doesn't mean that, by the way, even if you're working, you and the man is at home, it doesn't mean
to him.
Thank you. It doesn't mean he's not the head of the household.
Money is not the issue.
He's still the head of the household.
Exactly.
It's just, let me give you an example. I own a salon, right? And there's a time when the salon flooded, right? I'm the boss. I don't need to grab a mop and help them mop, but I did. I grabbed a mop, I went right down there, and we mopped the entire place together. Not because I was the leader and the boss and I could sit there and order people around, because sometimes you need to get in the trenches and show that you are as invested in the success of this partnership as everybody else who's with you. And leadership, like you said, is about service. It's not about me, I'm the boss, I call the shots. It's about we do whatever it is to get the result.
You know what?
And sometimes that means the boss needs to get off their high horse and be a servant to the people he or she is leading.
All the time.
And men don't get this. They are failing to get this.
You listen. I mean, those are nice gestures. And to be honest, like if my boss came into the trenches and did the work that I was doing, I might be grateful. But you see, this isn't sustainable long term. And that's why these bosses getting in the trenches, these are one-offs really. If there's an emergency, the boss will jump in, but not every day. The idea is to sort of help build a relationship, which is fine. But fundamentally,
for that understanding from men, sometimes I will out-earn you, but it doesn't mean that you should feel emasculated.
Hang on. But fundamentally, our relationship is based on the amount of leverage we both bring. Listen, if you want to apply for a salary raise, for example, okay, I mean, you are leveraging your productivity, perhaps your performance and your ratings. It is these things you're bringing to the table that you want for your bosses to consider.
And that's where you go wrong,
when you want a salary increase.
Cannot be like this. This is too transactional.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So now, since we already agreed that marriage is an institution and that institutions require hierarchies, and hierarchies are based on what leverage the different parts bring to the table. You have to be interdependent, otherwise there's no point in being together. If I have 5 girlfriends, I mean, my wife can't leverage her 6. And a woman do leverage 6. If a woman how many times do wives starve their husbands of sex when he's misbehaved or when he's not done as she asked? Do you see? And so the husband, wanting to be able to share the bed with her, will say, okay, you know what, I better start coming home early. I better not yell at her. That car she's been asking for, maybe I should go get it. Because I want...
But you're running...
See what I'm saying?
You are running the risk...
She's exercising her leverage.
You are running the risk of oversimplifying how complex marriage is.
Because it's quite straightforward.
It's not straightforward, my dear. Introduce sex into the equation, introduce all these other components. It's not as simple as
if we just look at another aspect of, let's talk about provision. We say a man should be a provider. This is one of his main roles as the head of a household, right? But we look at provision and we only think about it in financial terms. It's not. Provision is about, you need to provide for your wife emotionally. You need to provide for her in other ways that go beyond just providing money. You don't need to earn more money than me to provide for
some of those things.
And you don't need to earn more money money than me to be the head of the household.
You don't. And that's the myth we need to debunk.
And this is because
actually you do.
being the head of the household,
it's not based on research.
Let me just finish.
Research shows that when a woman earns more money, rate of divorce increases exponentially.
Why? Can I please answer him?
Because he's no longer needed as much.
Can I just answer him? And you know why? Because already you were not providing emotionally, you were not providing spiritually. Therefore, when I take away the financial provision, there's nothing else for me to depend on in terms of your provision. That is why when a man loses his money, he has nothing else to stand on, and his woman will leave him. He has not invested in all those other areas where he should be. Do you see what I mean?
Okay, we got to take a break, but first, Chris Rock.
Fellas, you ever been going through some hard times with your woman? You lose your job or something, and your woman tries to console you and say, hey, baby, don't worry. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. I know we got some bills, but if we got to get rid of some of this, we will get rid of some of this. She's talking about you. Fellas, if you lose your job, you're going to lose your woman. That's right. She may not leave the day you lose it, but the countdown has begun.
Well, our house has been quite interesting this morning, hasn't it, Fatboy?
Yeah.
And thanks for everybody who's listening. I must confess, I'm sorry we haven't taken as many calls as we probably should have. So we'll give you a chance to also call us up in this hour and share with us your thoughts. We're having a very interesting debate. Today is sort of a, if you would, continuation of a very riveting show on Saturday, live in Kicking, where Fatboy had some feminists in the studio discussing the situation, the war, men versus women, what's happening. But we decided to break it down a little bit and give it a bit of structure this morning. And we decided to go with the theme, the overarching theme, that the man is the head of the household, because I actually am the one who came up with this theme, because I feel like that's where the debate should be, and I think that is probably where the solution lies, because it's true to the instinct of a man, it's true to what the role of a man, and I think if we find a way to address this, that we will see less broken homes, we'll see less single parents, we'll see less divorce rates. But then again, maybe that's not the solution. I'm not prescribing a solution this morning, I'm just saying I would like for us to come up with one. But it's led to a very interesting debate that's focused on cultural influence, sexual liberation, and we've been talking about money, financial empowerment of women, and how that's affecting the man's ability to be the head of the household. And Fatboy said this is where the crux of the problem actually is. This is why divorce rates are so high. Men are redundant, basically.
Because marriage was fundamentally created as an institution that would oversee and manage the exchange of a female's reproductive capacity and a male's productive capacity and fruits of his labor and his protection. So
who was marriage created by?
Well, I'm not going to go down the religion path. Okay?
God.
Because I'm not. You see,
everybody doesn't want to go down.
Here's a problem. Like, you know what? Like, if you want to.
But you just said marriage was created too. I just want to know in your definition.
It was society.
Who was it created by?
Society.
In his definition, society.
It was society.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all right. And so what has happened is that the very basic premise of marriage, which was a woman's dependency on a man for sustenance, provision and protection, because that role has been undermined, the entire family unit started to break down. Just look at what's happening in the West, where we can all agree, I think, where things sort of happened quicker than it has elsewhere in terms of technological innovation, female economic emancipation and so forth, right? What do we see? We see that now they have a near 50% to 60% divorce rate, and it is, guess what, females initiating between 70 to 80% of the divorces, and the number one reason they're citing is not abuse or violence, but fulfillment. They're not happy, and so they move out. Okay, now which is why I said earlier that the giant elephant in the room was money, because it was a man's utility to the woman that really was the foundation of marriage. And because this utility is undermined, her willingness to pair up with him long term, her willingness to tolerate him long term has just gone out the window, which is why they're just abandoning marriage in droves. You see?
So, as I mentioned earlier, my theoretical framework is biblical, right? Because I'm a Christian, and this is not something I'm saying because it's said in church. I believe this. So, you said marriage is a social construct. I believe that marriage, the way it was intended, was created by God. And you may disagree on this, but let me just explain my thinking. I believe that marriage was created by God. There's a verse in the Bible that is quoted so often, what God has put together, let no man put asunder, and this is the basis for our hatred of divorce. But I find it very interesting what happened in the Bible when Jesus was asked about his view on divorce. It actually fascinated me because he didn't actually answer that question. The way he answered it, do you know, Fatboy, how he answered it?
No.
Okay, so the way he answered it was he didn't actually talk about divorce. He said, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. And what this means, this is really important. What God has put together, he refers to the beginning, when God put Adam and Eve together. Now, he put a certain kind of people together. This man was working. He had work to do. He was in the Garden of Eden doing work. He had work on his hands. Secondly, he was in God's presence. He had a very clear self-image. He knew who he was. What God put together, let no man put asunder. What we're putting together now is not put together by God most of the time. Most of the time. And that's where the problem comes in. That's why we have divorce, because what we're putting together was not meant to be together in the first place. Two broken people from broken homes with warped views on what marriage is for are not necessarily going to end up in a happy marriage.
What if that's the majority? What if the majority? Because I see when Fatboy said you women should find men who are good, who are true, who are blah blah blah.
Right.
How many women have been hoodwinked thinking that they're marrying a good man? He says all the right things initially. You marry him, suddenly it's a 360-degree change. The guy becomes he becomes a total.
That's a very good point. Which is why the old model was good. Marriage was a family business. It was not for you to go out there and find Prince Charming. It was for your family to sift through all the other families in the community, finding one that had a good reputation and a good background, and they would approach the parents of that family and say, please, we would like for our son to marry your daughter, or our daughter is of age.
Sure, but it wasn't 100% foolproof.
What I'm saying is, it at least guaranteed.
Reduced the incidences
compared to now.
Yeah,
you weren't just going to show up out of the blue, sweep a woman off her feet and marry her.
And then, that's true.
In the old days, your family would have to be known by your family, stretching back generations, and there'd be some kind of social policing, and so the institution could thrive.
Like with all things, knowledge is the beginning of your enlightenment.
Right.
It is you knowing all the things that go into
we
play.
Perish because we have no wisdom. We do not know.
Exactly. Everything Fatboy said is rooted in some sort of fact, and yes, he can support it and all that. And Fatboy is very good at that. He takes a concept that is so true and so factual, you cannot argue the facts, but he completely throws the baby out with the bathwater, because then he starts to engage in absurd assertions, sweeping statements like you should never marry a man without money. He reduces it to total ridiculousness.
I'm just offering advice.
And that is where I always have a problem with
ladies, go marry Prince Charming.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that you need to also check yourself before you wreck yourself. Sometimes your arguments are just.
But also
that's just trolling,
wasn't it?
Go get that hot guy.
You see,
that blows your mind.
And yet I agreed with him in the beginning. Sanyu breakfast. Good morning. Hello.
Morning. How are you guys doing?
We're very good, thanks.
There's something curious that has happened in there this morning. There was a reference made to the Matrix.
Something curious.
Yeah. Okay, you guys sound pretty rational and calm and, forthright, and it's a remarkable difference from the mistakes that were going on Saturday. But apart from that, there's a remarkable phrase that you guessed. There's a passage that she was going through, which is just when she was speaking about marriage, and it was, how it's biblically defended and how Jesus responded, which essentially he did by actually reflecting. He was actually asked a question. But isn't that, for a fan of the Matrix, isn't she kind of doing the whole blue pill, red pill thing that she claimed she, was not an advocate of? Marriage is actually an ideal. Whichever way we want to look at it, it's an ideal. It's one that's flawed and one that has been flawed for a long time. Once its basic intrinsic actual purpose for society started fading off, as Fatboy has argued, it says getting the problems that it's facing today. Coming suddenly and saying God decided it should happen in this manner is a bit limited, because in the Bible You have examples where it really had very, very practical purposes, especially in the Old Testament. And when those purposes just fade off like they have today, the framework doesn't work anymore.
And I like
struggling and sticking to the whole idea and saying this is what was meant to be and painting it in nice little ideal colors really doesn't work.
Okay. If I can respond to that, I think, and this is the problem we have whenever we raise a Christian argument, and of course I'm actually glad that it comes up because this is the truth of it. The truth of it is that we are flawed. Humanity is flawed. We can never live up to God's standards. That's the truth of where we are. All we can do is try. And I know that a lot of these things seem idealistic, but that's because that's where we're supposed to be trying to get. And the world is built on ideals. I think just because humanity is flawed and we're in a bad situation doesn't mean we should accept it and resign ourselves to stay there if we're continuously trying to get better and trying to be better.
But do you agree with him when he says that marriage in itself is an ideal that cannot be attained? You know how we have a mirage in a desert?
I think our conceptions of marriage these days are ideals that cannot be attained. But what it's meant to be is something that many of us don't know. I have to say, in all honesty, I don't even know myself what marriage is exactly. All I have are guidelines. Guidelines that, I can take from the Bible, which is something I live by. I have guidelines. But I can't say that I know for sure that this is exactly what it's supposed to be like, because so many things are changing every day.
Ask me and I'll tell you.
Please. Very interesting.
My main point is that humanity is flawed. So of course it's an ideal. Everything we aspire to is an ideal. Yes.
Democracy is an ideal.
Exactly.
Good governance is an ideal.
Non-discrimination is an ideal. Everything we live
Fidelity is an ideal.
Live by is an ideal.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But I think more to the point is the fact that, look, we are in dire straits. The numbers Fatboy has given us are scary. But I still believe strongly that the only way to raise a good family that's not dysfunctional is in the context of a loving relationship, a man and a woman, in an institution called marriage. I think that still holds true. In as much as the previous caller said, the truth is the utility of marriage is dying. We don't need it anymore. Men don't need women as much. Women don't need men as much. So why are we still bothering to get married in the first place?
You know why I even bother with this discussion? Personally, it's because there was a time when it didn't seem like there would be an end to things like racism, because it was profitable for everyone and it made sense, and the people with the power were the ones who were making the decisions, and for them racism worked. But there were a few people who said this doesn't fly. I don't care what it looks like around me. This doesn't fly. This doesn't sit well with me. And they're the ones who made changes and made things happen. So if we all just sit back and accept the status quo, nothing will ever change.
Okay, but you make a valid point there. The truth is, it looks hopeless. But then what's the alternative? I keep asking Fatboy. You tell me. You're the bastion of information, knowledge, and all things wisdom.
Indeed,
please explain to me what the alternative is. MGTOW. What's the alternative?
No. Wait. Let's maybe later on after the break we can look at the end game, how this might all end up. And I think a very good place to start is by looking at trends in the West, where the things we're talking about have been a bigger issue, right? Because the female emancipation.
Why can't we decide our own future and our own direction? Why must we always look to the West to tell us how our future is going to pan out? Why? Why can't Africans determine their own future for once?
Come on, Seanice. Really? Essentially what you want to do, what I think it's very useful. It's not an absolute, it's not perfectly in sync, but I'm saying it's looking at what's happened in other societies where similar social trends have occurred, I think will provide a good indication of where we might be headed, especially since we're seeing the same problems emerging here. We're seeing some of those same problems that have already happened there emerging here. So looking at where they're headed might give a good indication of where we might be headed.
Okay, fine. That's definitely one way to do it. We'll take a quick break and we'll also take some of your phone calls. Promise, right after we get back. Very interesting.
Some of us are not struggling.
We
walked off the contest. We're letting the chips fall where they may.
I like that.
We're spectators to this disaster.
You walked
that's
off
unfolding.
You see, the problem is, Fatboy, you can't disassociate yourself like that. You've still. Never mind. Let's go to the phones and give you an opportunity. People have been calling and ambushing me on text that we can't reach you guys. So let's give you a chance to talk to us. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Now, for the first time, I feel Fatboy entirely.
Why do people keep saying that?
No, continue.
Yes, I've been
happening a lot lately.
9 years. No, about 9 years. And it's really good.
So you said you've been married for 9 years? I can hardly hear what you're saying.
I have been, I'm driving, maybe let me just pause.
No problem.
I've been married 9 years.
You've been married for 9 years, okay?
And about 2 months back, we separated. And it really is manipulative. That is the truth. Because I earned about 6 times with my husband.
6 times? 6?
Yeah. So after he left.
So wait, who left who? Did you break up with him or did he leave you?
No, we couldn't just stick together anymore.
So it was a mutual agreement to separate?
Yes.
Okay.
The thing is, try to think where he continue being relevant. Apart from my son's life, we can find it. You know?
Yeah.
If it was the other way around and he was the provider, and I would be inclined to be, to accept the society of a woman. But he wasn't that. I provide everything for myself and for my son, and so his response remains my son's way. And as you know, of course, society, please go back, make it work for the sake of the son. But later you bear children stay with a man because of children, and then your child will turn out not this big in the home institution, like boy that. Yes. So at the end of the
do you think something else could have contributed to the breakdown of your marriage aside from just the fact that you were earning more than him?
No. Actually, no. It's a build-up of things. But
so you think there's more to it than just the fact that you were earning 6 times what he was earning?
Yes.
Okay.
But you see, the 6 times thing is very important, because if it wasn't there, we'll still be together.
You really believe that if it wasn't for the fact you were earning more than him, you two would still be together?
Aren't you belaboring the point?
No, I'm getting to the point. Because I appreciate what you're saying.
It really is the truth. When you get married, you will know what I'm talking about. Men want to provide.
And we've not actually said that's not the case.
Yeah, it is the case, but it contributes a lot, because you were trying to learn from the Western cultures, and this really is the point. Japan, for example, I lived in Japan. Japan, for example, the women don't need the men.
So you feel like there's no purpose in your marriage anymore?
Apart from my son, yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's a different discussion, to be fair. If you feel, I think Nancy and I were very clear that we said, look, you have to define for yourself what the purpose of your marriage is.
Right.
And you see, she has no purpose anymore. She doesn't need the man for financial providence. She doesn't even like his company, probably. He's doing nothing for her.
Yes.
In which case, she decided to opt out. So, if that is your purpose, so be it. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not here to prescribe solutions for anyone. I am not assuming that I know how every marriage works and that I'm setting out a set of rules and tenets that you should follow to have a successful marriage. That is not what I'm doing. I just said, look, I'm here to offer an opinion, and at the end of the day, we want to, instead of fighting men all the time, we invite you to say, how do we sort out these divorce rates, these single parent homes, these dysfunctional families? How is there a way we can stop this from happening? And if at the end of the discussion we realize there's absolutely no way to stop it from happening, then why are people getting married?
It's inevitable.
You see what I mean? Let's get a solution for once in our lives.
If I were a religious person, I would be calling this a sign of the end times. But since I'm not, I'm more in favor of
it is, by the way.
Pragmatic.
There you go.
Oh, really? But essentially what it is, it's civilization as we know it is collapsing.
Seriously,
so let's
it's imploding. Is what it is.
Let's talk about the end game. Now, I promised, I had suggested we look at what's happening in the West. Now, what's happening in the West essentially is what they're calling a demographic winter. They are experiencing population. Basically, the population is shrinking in the West because with female economic emancipation, more women are interested in pursuing careers and having jobs because now these options are available to them. And a woman that has a job and has a career tends not to want that many kids. So quite often she will have none, or if she has any, there will be 1 or 2, right? The problem is to replace your population, or to keep it sustainable, each married couple needs to have, or every two adults need to have 2.2 children. You know, like 2 to replace the both of them, and 1 to sort of just to keep things moving a little bit, you know. But what happens is now the population replacement rate has shrunk so low, it's below replacement level. So if you have 2 people producing 1 child, essentially these 2 people are failing to replace themselves. So this goes on for many generations, and what you have is what you, like in a situation in Japan where the elderly are starting to outgrow the youth in number.
Yeah.
And this is having a tragic effect on the economies. There are not enough taxpayers being produced to pay for the social services which the elderly
that you are making our point for us, which is that it is now even more important than ever to fight for marriage, to fight for the institution that will enable us.
The problem is,
you see what I mean? So it seems to me like we are agreeing that it's important to fight for this.
The problem is, it's impossible.
Rendering MGTOW redundant. Which is why I started this entire discussion.
But so, just a second, because
you cannot afford to opt out.
I'm not here trying to change the world, and to be honest, like, I'm not out on a crusade for the future generation. The future generation can take care of itself.
You should be out on a crusade. You should be.
Attitude that leaves us in the problems we're in.
Fine. Okay. Now
that's how it's going to be. But
at least you're honest about it.
The reason why there's nothing that can be done about it.
So we should listen
going
to
back to what I said in the
knowing
beginning.
that you care nothing for future generations.
I care for the facts. All right.
That's it.
So the facts are the facts going
to help the future generation?
Do with the facts as you please. I'm just laying out the facts.
Then there's no point in
Let me explain why nothing can be done about it. All right? Because the single important variable in this equation is women. It is once they began to become economically self-sufficient that they lost interest in the idea.
That's exactly what we said. We said
family. Now the
women were the key to this whole thing from the beginning.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. I do not see how it will be possible to motivate women to go back to the old setup. I don't think it's possible. I don't think women would want to.
I agree with you there. I agree.
And neither would I want to force them to.
Once you've tasted financial empowerment, freedom, success, these things, it's a fallacy, in fact, to want people to go back.
Exactly.
That's
so there's no turning back.
We're saying, and I agree with you there, no turning back. We're saying perhaps we can forge a way forward.
This is what's going to happen.
I think I think James, what you're describing is change. Change is the only true constant we have. But the fact is, change must occur within boundaries. So within natural boundaries, within certain boundaries. So this change that you're describing, yes, it's happening.
Yes.
But what we're saying is, we're not just going to sit back, let it happen. Let me just finish. If you go into a shop and try on a shoe that doesn't fit you, will you cut off your foot, or will you try a different shoe?
What's happening?
That's very simplistic. But all I'm saying is, let's not throw out the whole institution of marriage because it's not working. Can we find ways to make it work?
This is what is happening.
We have some guidelines. Can we find some ways to make it work?
Madam Guest,
the world is different.
Madam Guest, what is happening is that nature is taking its course. Now in the West, particularly in Western Europe, where also population's growth is below replacement rate, what's happening is that the immigrants are outbreeding the indigenous people, particularly Muslim immigrants. And according to projections, by 2050, the majority of Europe will be Muslims. Why? Because Muslims are still living in the traditional setup.
Culture and religion.
At home producing babies.
You see where we're going with this? I love the.
So Muslims are going to replace whites in Europe.
You're bringing us back to the fact that we need Jesus.
So essentially, Western civilization is on its way to collapsing,
and we shall
to be replaced by an Islamic civilization.
We shall also collapse, and we will be replaced by people who uphold true religion, who can actually sit and foster families.
By then I'll be dead.
What Fatboy has just said completely illustrates the point.
Yes.
Change takes place within natural boundaries. Even if change happens, women are more empowered.
Yes.
They now want to have kids at 35. Guess what? Their bodies are not somehow going to be able to have kids at 50.
So you want to live like those Muslim women in Europe
children
who are just at home producing kids?
No.
All I'm saying is the change is going to occur within natural boundaries.
Whether you want to
so how do we then adapt and make sure we're just moving the furniture and not breaking down the walls? That's the question.
All right, let's take a few calls and see what you have to say. Good morning. We lost you there. Hi, Sean. Marriage's true purpose is the general good and survival of humanity itself. How, you ask? Good, focused citizens we all search for as ideal marriage partners can only largely emerge from a settled home. And what is a settled home? A loving married couple. So society's next focused leaders can only emerge from good homes, and so on and so on. Thank you very much for your comment. You didn't leave your name, but I thought it was really
a good one.
A good assertion. Percy texted and said, it's true that men abdicating responsibility makes them real less of men and makes women certainly adapt and lose the feminine gene, naturally making them less likely to submit. Now, that doesn't mean that we advocate and change the natural status quo. No. We should instead strive to make all men realize that leadership at the top is earned and meant to be sustained, and any deviation naturally takes away their natural privileges to be head.
Right.
Percy, thank you.
That's a very good point.
A very good point, Percy. Thank you so much. Diane, you said there is no ideal for marriage, but the guidelines help make the relationship better, both being answerable to a higher power that can change man or woman and help strike the balance as long as both parties are able to agree on making it work for the greater purpose of children and indeed the society. That's Diane Komunda. Thank you very much. Well said as well. Let's go to the phones again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Yes. I would like to go back to the point of choosing a wife and how it was done by the families getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in the Bible, and there is some clause in the Bible. Wise man say that your father can give you everything. He can give you all the rich. He inherits everything from him. But the one thing he cannot give you is a good wife. Only God can give you a good wife. So, and that takes us to the point back that marriage is designed by God, and whatsoever happens, well, two people meet, however how bad they are broken, as long as they meet and decide on marriage, it is God that has planned that. And if they focus on their brokenness and trying to make it right and not decide on all being perfect like in all the movies and love stories that we read, it will work out. Because at the end of it all comes back to that in every marriage, in every home, there are things that we fight. And our imperfections, or the man is imperfection and the woman is imperfection, these are things that we cannot fight, but these are things that we can learn to love them for. If someone does not love you for your imperfection, if someone doesn't love you for your maybe broken finger or whatsoever, then they do not love you. But if someone loves you for leaving the toilet seat up, or for not making the bed, or for reading magazines all the time, then they love you and they fight and try to make sure that they try as hard as possible. Maybe if they cannot change you, but they can learn to live with that. And the other thing is that these all mistakes that we make in marriage are the ones that bring us closer. The idea of divorce won't make us settle down, because we will still linger in the past and try to make it right, and maybe when we go in another marriage, we are still going to make the same mistakes we did in the past.
All right, thanks a lot for calling and offering your viewpoint there. Men and women. We have fathers, we have brothers, we have uncles, men, you have sisters, you have mothers, you have wives. It befits you nothing to fight a war and wage a war against the opposite sex. It makes more sense for us to come together and say, look, we have some serious problems ahead of us. Can we get together and seriously try and deal with these issues?
As a parting shot, I just want to say, I think one of the biggest problems that we have, and this really is the crux of every other problem, marriage, relationships, is because we sort of have a lack of purpose. It used to be about doing something. These days it's about being someone. I want to be this, I want to be that. We never think about what are we doing, and it reflects in everything that we do. artists are artists, some of them, because they want to be artists, not because they want to make good music. And I think that's a bit of a problem. Is the purpose.
Sorry.
And when you don't know what the purpose of something is, you will always misuse it. Same with sex. Because we never think about the purpose of sex, we misuse it. Same with marriage. If we don't go into a marriage thinking about what is the purpose of this marriage, and we don't think about the fact that it's maybe about the children and the wider good of society, we're going to be very selfish in the decisions that we make. We're going to make the wrong decisions, and we're going to end up with a very flawed system. So I think purpose is...
I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said that. It's no longer about...
it used to be about
what we do.
Being someone.
Now it's about doing something.
It used to be about doing something. Now it's about being someone.
Being someone, which is interesting because that also speaks to ego and fulfilling our own selfish needs as opposed to looking at the bigger picture. So that's been it's been very interesting. Thank you very much, guest.
Dear guest.
Dear guest.
Man, who is she, by the way?
Okay, now I can tell you who the guest is. The guest in studio today is the one and only dear sister, younger sister of mine, Miss Nancy Kacungira, who has graced us with her presence from all the way in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you very much.
Can we replace you with her? There's a way she was really sensible.
You can't afford her. You can afford me. We can't afford her.
But hey, allow me one quick parting shot here. And I like what you two have to say, and I enjoyed this discussion because surprisingly we were almost 95% on the same page. So essentially I think we got to talk more about, because we ended up not disputing the facts but the implications of them, which I tend to think is a more interesting conversation to unlike Saturday where you couldn't get off the ground. And I like that you're sort of relying on these sort of making these moral appeals, these appeals to like some higher virtue, some standard for life, some hope or dream or quest or purpose. Unfortunately, I am very pessimistic about such appeals. I have noticed they tend not to work. Uganda is the best example. I mean, there is no shortage of people giving these kinds of making these kinds of appeals, and yet morally speaking we're in the toilet. So clearly people don't value these things. People seem to be responding more to incentive, and so I take the view that nature will play things out as it will, and all trends indicate that we're headed for a downward spiral and a civilizational collapse. The West will fall first, and
so basically doom and gloom, ladies and gentlemen. I present you.
That's right. So depressing. So what I'm doing is, I'm enjoying the decline. The sexual revolution means that women are now more available.
You're enjoying
and
the
since
decline.
there are now more desperate women who have failed to find men, they're usually easier to get into bed.
Wow.
And life is good.
Does your mother listen to this show? Because if I were her, I don't know.
Life is good. Modern technology makes it possible for us to look after ourselves. We can hire helpers to look after our homes. I mean, for a guy, this period is a bonanza.
Thank you very much, Fatboy, for your parting shot of let's get laid. What is it you said? Pound and round and pound. What's your...
I didn't say that.
That's what you said.
I put words in my mouth.
Hey, it's all over your Facebook. Cut and run. I don't know. Those things you say.
Pounds and bounce.
Pounds and bounce. There you go. That's the one.
Hey, but hey, if you find something nice, and it's worth building up, then by all means give it a shot.
Okay. I will say that this is the beauty of the human race. Nancy said it very well. She said, there was a time when we never thought slavery would end. And yes, Fatboy thinks his ideals are flowery and feminine and appealing to people's moral compass is flawed and wrong and ineffective. I say, you know what? That rock that's on the beach that eventually gets smoothed out, it's because of years, months, eons of the wave consistently washing over it until it smooths out. So call me an idealist, but you know what? The struggle is real and we shall continue. A luta continua.
Amen.
Nancy, thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Epic. Josh is here with the news. Josh, are you okay?
Fatboy has been suffering from what we call family roars.
This is 88.2 Sanyu FM.